We're back with another episode of Franchise My Business, the podcast for franchisors, hosted by franchisors. I'm your host, Kevin Oldham, and we're back with another amazing guest interview. I don't know about you. I'm not female, but I'm married to one. And I know what it's kind of like for her to work in corporate America. And I know that there's a different set of opportunities, we'll call them, that get pointed out to you when you're in corporate America and you're a hard-driving female executive. You see opportunities to create value for others through those experiences. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. So if you're a female working in corporate America today, and you've got like business ownership ambition in you, turn this bad boy up and tune everything out for the next 25 minutes because my guest, Mayumi Young, founder and CEO of CPA Moms, is going to drop some fire today, and I can't wait to get into this conversation. So without further ado, welcome to the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. As we were visiting a little bit beforehand, kind of tapping into your story and stuff, I'm like, oh, we need to stop talking about this privately and just start hitting record. So why don't you give us a quick background update before you started CPA Moms and just tell us what you were doing in corporate America.
Sure. I started as a traditional CPA in the Big Four. So I worked for Pricewaterhouse and did my tour of duty, if you will. I got recruited out of a public and went into corporate and did a lot of international finance for a telecom company. And then decided it was time to find more meaning to my life and chose to become an entrepreneur in 2000. So CPA Moms is actually my third business that I was founder and CEO of. And the rest is history. I think we're going to learn more about that in a sec.
Yeah, no, we will. We will. Because we're going to go from 2000 and we're going to jump straight to 2008. If I recall, October of 2008, basically what is now CPA Moms, right, gets launched. Let's talk about what was happening earlier in 2008. The world is not doing amazing. We're in the middle of a financial meltdown that we had not seen since the Great Depression. And you start a business. What the heck was going on?
Slight masochism and a lot of spiritual inspiration, we'll call it. Back in 2000, when I became an entrepreneur, I made a promise at that time that I was no longer going to work just for money. That for me, it had to have both purpose and profit. And, I honored and kept that promise. And really the agreement is if I'm called forward, I answer the call. So CPA Moms at the time was an answer to a question that I was holding, that I think a lot of people were holding at that time, which is, what am I supposed to do next? The business that I was in wasn't going. Actually, my husband and I were working on a business together, and it was all around real estate investing, and that went up in flames. And so, and we know before. Did it
go up in flames because of 2007 and 8?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, just destruction.
Yeah, it was a meltdown of a whole level that I still have the wounds and the scars.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
But everything is perfect and always right and happens the way it's supposed to. And really what came out of it was just a searching, right? Like I want to do something that's meaningful. I wanted to use my gifts and talents, and I wanted to serve. And so I had the opportunity. It was really, it came because somebody asked me to coach a woman who had been a stay-at-home mom for 8 years. And I had already been coaching entrepreneurs around money. And I was frustrated at how bad the accountants were that they were using. And when I coached this CPA who was a stay-at-home mom, how to re-enter the workplace, a sort of light bulb went off. And I just saw this incredible opportunity to support entrepreneurs with something that I felt they were missing, which is a much higher quality caliber professional accountant, as well as help that CPA mom who I saw back in my Pricewaterhouse days go through a one-way revolving door, spend all this time and energy getting her license, which is incredibly difficult to do. It's like getting your MD or JD, and then go on maternity leave and never come back. And like all this untapped talent that had to choose between having a family or a career. I just thought that was dumb. Like, why should we have to choose?
Yeah.
So 2008 came, I answered the call, and here we are.
That's beautiful. I love that as well. I love that it really wasn't you or on your own volition. It's like, hey, you felt called to do this. And the whole purpose and profit thing like makes it so that it's meaningful. Like you'll stick through it. And you've been at it a long time. So it's you launched this thing in 2008. We're recording this in 2023. So what are we talking? 15 years, a decade and a half. You've got this baby. This baby. The baby is your baby. Your baby is your company. Yes. And another world event takes place because you're a masochist. We get a pandemic and you're like, hey, let's start franchises. As a matter of fact, April of 2020 was when everybody was totally freaked out, locked in their houses, like wondering what's going to happen. As a matter of fact, I don't even think Uncle Sam had the business plan, the rescue funds available. And you decide to go start a new business because when you franchise, it's a new business. What's going on with you? I love it. I think it's beautiful that you fly into the burning fire and say, hey, I'm going to go create something. Yeah.
Well, the wheels were already in motion. So I had chosen to franchise at the beginning of the year. I was already a good 2/3, 3/4 of the way into the development process when the pandemic happened. And I had about 60 seconds of, okay, do we press on or do we stop? And I say only 60 seconds because it wasn't a difficult choice for me to make. I felt so strongly in what we had created and what we were doing and the value that we were bringing to the marketplace that I felt like I had an obligation in some way to carry forward. And while everyone else was making sourdough bread and using up my Zoom, which, half the world didn't even know existed. I probably worked harder than I had ever worked, really to try to, myself and a lot of professionals, accountants, especially trying to understand the new laws. It's like jumping out of the plane where they're still building the parachute, we didn't get the parachute. They just said, hey, go talk to your accountant. They know. We're like, we do? We know?
Exactly. Anyway, my CPA was like, what? We don't know any more than you. I'm like, that's encouraging. Thank you. Or actually the line I got, what the line, I love my accountant. He's always like, yeah, we're still looking for more guidance on that. I'm like,
very PC.
Just say pound sand, Kevin, we'll let you know. Like, I would appreciate that much more. Just pound sand, we'll let you know.
Love it.
So let's talk about when you awarded your first franchise. So you start franchising, basically, was it in April of 2020? You got somebody say, let's go? Yeah. Pretty
much. I mean, we started having conversations even before we launched just to check the temperature of our network and community. And when we were official, we were able to circle back to those that expressed interest and pretty quickly had our first franchise owner. I think her official start date was June, but there was, I think she signed in early May. Cool. Within a few weeks of us actually completing our legal documents.
So like from January to April, you're like, hey, we got the majority of this thing baked and built. What resource, how did you figure out how to build it? Did you go on the internet? Did you, talk to mentors, advisors? Did you hire consultants? How did you, because a lot of people don't know where to start. And so a lot of times they'll go to an attorney is what I've found. They'll be like, oh, I need to figure out the legal aspect. How did you start? Figuring out how to build your franchise system.
So two things. I had a lot of it built because I was an agency before I was a franchise. So I was already helping to build CPA practices and creating lead generation for them and so forth. So I had a lot of training in some of the systems already done. But I'm not foolish enough to endeavor into something as big as this on my own. If there's anything I've learned as an entrepreneur, the longer I become an entrepreneur, the more I realize I don't know. I was less humble my first few years when I launched as an entrepreneur, and much more clear that we need help.
Your ego gets squashed right away when you decide. I mean, I had a big ego when I started this company 8 years ago, and it took about 60 days, and that ego was gone. I was like,
well, I'm a little bit more stubborn. It took me a little longer to think that I couldn't figure it out on my own. I hired a franchise developer who I love and would recommend to anybody. And there's a lot.
Go ahead and give him a shout out on the air. Who are they?
Rick Grossman with Franchise Hub. He is amazing. Franchise Bible coach. He is incredible, amazing. Just gets the whole idea of servant leadership, understands that you need to put, franchise success as your priority, and just completely shares the value that I have, which is, this is a relationship. And so anyway, yes, he and I had been friends. He was an advisor. Of course, I thought I turned all my alarms off.
I thought I told you to muzzle the dogs, mute the phones, put duct tape on the husband's mouth. But I love it. It adds some levity to our show. It adds levity, right?
My apologies. All right, all the alarms are off.
Who cares? Let's go. It's all right.
So he had all the relationships. He brought my franchise attorney to the table. He answered. I got a PhD in franchise law and rules and the do's and don'ts in about 6 months. I was fire hosed, and he was amazing. I couldn't imagine doing this without somebody with his brain trust.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, pulling upon mentors, consultants, or whatever, it definitely helps you collapse time. And it's one resource that none of us can create more of. I mean, we just really can't. So we can always make money, but it's like really hard to create time. So you have to buy it back. I mean, it's really the best way to do it. Matter of fact, this book, I'll pimp it out here on the air. Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. I've talked about it a lot, but it's really a great, particularly if you're a franchisor. I wish this book would have been around, a decade ago. But it's all about getting help and buying back your time at a rate that is profitable for you, so you can go work on the next rung of things that need to be tended to in the business. So today, like, you guys have a really different model, which I want to tap into, because I think a lot of times when people think about a franchise, they think about a territory, a designated area that is theirs. And you all have taken a different approach, which I think is really, really cool. Can you just share with me real quick, like, how your franchise works from a franchisee perspective? If there's huge CapEx that's involved, which I know the answer to. I'm giving you softballs here, right? Giving you softballs. I'm going to throw you softballs, but tell us a little bit about what it's like for the franchisee, as well as like who they can serve, where they're operating, et cetera.
Sure. So I feel like we're more of, there's a lot in our system and we call it an ecosystem we say is more done for you. In a way, I feel like we're more of an incubator accelerator than a typical franchise. We use the franchise legal system to create transparency and equality and win-win-win. But in reality, how we implement and created the model was to take most of the lift off of the professional working mom who is becoming an entrepreneur for the first time, and recognizing that it's difficult to do it all at once. And even if we give them everything on a silver platter, they still have to go through the resource of time, money, and energy, which takes time away from their family. And so we made a conscious choice to try to do as much for them as possible and piecemeal what they would take on and what they would learn over time, which I don't think is very common in the franchise world. I obviously don't know everything there is out there.
I haven't heard that approach yet. It's like,
so in our ecosystem, we do
Yeah.
everything. Yeah. We do lead
Yeah.
generation, which is now starting to convert into client generation. We do billing services like third-party billing, so they don't have to worry about that. We have custom tech. We have training that isn't a week or, typically I hear that franchise training is a very short segment of time, and then you have sort of optional training or monthly check-ins or whatever. Well, we designed everything around almost like an MBA program. So we actually call it MBA 1, MBA 2, Mastering the Business of Accounting. So we meet weekly for at least a year. And now we're actually adding a second year structured sort of real world application. If you think of, if you want to become an MD, you go through a residency program before you're actually able to cut somebody open and, perform surgery on their heart.
Right.
Well, we don't do that in the accounting world. And so there's something to be said for, in our model, in a way, you're kind of getting paid to learn how to elevate yourself as an entrepreneur. So from their perspective, I feel like we've given them a really clean bridge to transition from being an employee, both from a mindset perspective and technical experience, into really learning how to become a 6 and 7 figure firm owner. They have the ability to serve clients anywhere in the world. There is no competition. It's only collaboration. Franchise owners are constantly sending leads and clients across to each other. Everyone sort of has each other's back. And we say that you're independent, but not alone. The reality is, if you go alone, you can go fast, but if you go together, you'll go far. And really, it's about appreciating the fact that there's a huge market out there, and nobody needs to compete with anyone else. So we have, we have no territories. Everything is 100% virtual. I mean, you have the option to work in the office, but why carry all those operating costs? You don't need them. It gives them the ability to raise their kids from home. And long before COVID taught everyone that it was possible to work remotely. I was beating that drum for about 20 years. And so
I've been beating it since 2007.
Yeah. It's just, I didn't understand why people didn't think it was possible, but now everyone goes, oh.
I'll leave names off the air, but somebody once told me that I work for that working from home was code for effing off. Those were the exact words. And I'm like, oh no, that's polar opposite and very finite thinking. And so I'm guessing that message, it's really old school. Really, it's not what today's, if somebody's thinking about buying a business, I mean, it's not what they're looking for. If a lot of people aren't, they don't necessarily want a physical where that they have to go to. So that's really cool. I love the flexibility. And furthermore, I love the collaboration aspect. I've seen franchise systems that are highly collaborative between their franchisees and as well as the relationship with the franchisor. And then I've seen kind of more of that corporate hierarchy where it's like, us versus them, whether it's between the Z-Zor, the Z and the Zor. And I keep coming back to this word harmony. Harmony, working together, collaborating is a way more fun way of doing business. Like
completely,
it's way more fun. It's way more rewarding. So, kudos for being intentional about the way that you built this thing. I do want to go back to something because you dropped the ultimate cliche on me, and I don't know too many people who actually write their business model on a paper napkin. But that's what you did. And back in 2008, at the bottom of the napkin, you had the F word in there. You planted the seed of franchising. Yeah. Like, that's super cool. Where were you when you wrote that down on a napkin? Tell me you were at the prototypical bar or a restaurant.
I was not at a bar or a restaurant. I actually don't remember. I think I was probably in my home office at the time. But it was very clear. It was so simple. It was, and it was, it was really an answer to the question, how do I exit? And the word exit meant, how do I take myself out of an operating role?
Correct. Yeah.
And not exit the business entirely, but, shift.
Elevate your role. Yeah.
Thank you.
Elevate it. Yeah.
And I wrote franchise, and I knew nothing really about franchises at the time. I just understood that it was a system. I understood E-Myth and the principles of, leverage and systems. And I've always considered myself more of a financial architect and a systems brain and financial models and revenue models. And so it just made a lot of sense, and it matched my personality. So
awesome.
I don't like reinventing the wheel.
No, you're not. You're not. But you are doing amazing work. I've got a daughter who's 9, and I think about what her life looks like in the workplace, and then my wife, who's a huge influence on me professionally, and then naturally as her mate, I'm listening to things that she brings to the table, and so I think it's super, super admirable that you've identified a target audience that you want to serve with your franchise, and then given them a vehicle that involves purpose and meaning, which I think we all want in work and what we do, and if you have that, since this is the cliche episode, we'll just drop another one. If you have that, right, everything else just kind of works out. As long as because when the times are tough, like that really commitment to what you're working on will make you push through the dip and make you persevere and do the hard work when times are challenging. And the one thing that I think we both know in entrepreneurship is you will always have challenges. Always.
Yes.
And you don't want those challenges to be so big for you to throw in the towel. Right?
Yeah. If you don't have, they say it all the time, if you don't have a big enough why, it's not going to get you over the obstacles that are absolutely on the path. I mean, everyone has them, but I think the bigger the game that you play, the bigger the obstacles that you have to, overcome. And I completely agree about, it is being an entrepreneur is one of the most challenging ways of growing as a human being. Being a parent is probably only the one that's more challenging than being an entrepreneur, but they're pretty close because your businesses do become your babies in a way.
Yes, they do.
But I think that I had an opportunity early on because we were successful as a firm without the whole CPA Moms piece of it. And I had an opportunity to ask myself that question, like, are you going to be an ordinary firm and change your brand name? Because we had to for some regulatory rules within the accountancy world, not even franchise world. We have 2 regulatory bodies. Being CPAs, we have the Board of Accountancy and Federal Trade Commission because,
Yay, regulation.
Clearly, why not?
Yay, regulation and taxes. I mean, let's just call them taxes, right?
That. Yeah. So we had an opportunity to let that part go. And because we had a thriving practice, and I woke up and was very clear that this is what gets me up in the morning. It is the opportunity to get letters from 15, she not 15 at the time. I think she was an 8-year-old daughter of one of our professional moms, wrote a letter about how she loved that her mom was there for her when she got home from school, could help her with her homework. I mean, if that doesn't melt your heart and break your heart wide open, I mean, that got me through another year. Just knowing that.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's some rocket fuel for the entrepreneur who's trying to build something. Yeah, it is.
Absolutely. Because then you know that you have this incredible ripple effect, that you're not just serving the franchise owner, but every single person they employ and their families.
Heck yeah.
Their families and generations to come. You'll never really, when you are socially focused and impact focused, you'll never know the degree to which the impact that you've made has in the world. And so we actually, stand behind social enterprises so much that when I restructured our enterprise this year, the legal structure that sits behind our enterprise is actually called Makana, which means gift in Hawaiian. And it was organized under a public benefit corporation. And we're setting ourselves up to become an actual B Corp, which, if you know anything about B Corps, it's really all about stakeholder, everyone winning and being, responsible not just for, the the shareholders profiting, but for everyone, every stakeholder winning, including the planet. So I just, I love that you talk about your wife and your daughter and the world that you want them to live and thrive in. And, you know, for me, looking at the challenges that professional working women face and continue to, you talked about harmony earlier. Really, we're after work-life harmony. We're after shattering the statistics. And, you know, I gag when I hear that I think less than 4% of women-owned businesses ever make seven figures. I gag when I hear that 20% of women make partners in the accounting industry when over 60% of the industry is female. I gag with all of these statistics that demonstrate that we still haven't worked out the actual design of business that is a match for what women want and need these days to thrive. It's a design problem. And so where we stand is, well, let's create a new model, a new design. Like Buckminster Fuller says, you don't want to change the way people think, just create a tool, the use of which will create new ways of thinking. So, you know, we just want to be the example of what's possible.
Beautiful. If people want to learn more about you and or your company, like what's the best place for them to go?
Probably our
get
website.
Some information. Your website? What's the web address?
CPAmoms.com.
Short and simple. CPAmoms.com.
Yes.
Mayumi, this has been a breath of fresh air. Thank you for sharing this half hour with me and more importantly with the people that are listening. I'm super excited to see what you do. I really am. I don't just say that. Like I think that your heart and your efforts are in the right place and you're doing some cool stuff. And so that's a noble cause, right? It's a noble cause.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate just you inviting me to come and share, as my favorite topic is talking about our franchise owners and their success and the vision we have for the world. And so thank you for giving me this platform to share. My pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I know that if you listen to this episode, maybe if you're a female, maybe if you're a dad who's got a daughter, you see some of the issues that sometimes females just have to manage and go against the mountains that us guys don't, right? If this resonated with you, chances are it resonated with somebody in your life. Go ahead and do me a favor and text this episode right now to them and just say, hey, I was thinking about you. Check this out. My second ask is super short. If you value what we're doing at Franchise My Business, it would mean the world to me if you just smash that subscribe button right now. Until next time, I'm your host, Kevin Oldham, and I hope that you have a phenomenal week.